Chill here with Sirius Taurus Moon. This is Mars hour, Mercury day. Mars with Sedna in the 10th house in Gemini, applying to conjoin Uranus as well. Ascendant and midheaven ruled by Mercury. Mercury retrograde at 26 degrees Cancer. So we are here in Ben Gurion Airport in Israel, activating the 9th house to talk about April 2027 and the 2027 astrology. I'll begin as I move without further ado to April. Moon is 24 degrees Capricorn. I'll begin with the basis, the omens. By the way, the window is still not fixed. For those who will watch the previous episodes, I will try to move that to some sort of a discount key if I get to. After people lost channels and gained them within a week, and then they're looking at me like I sense them in the ether, like giving me the look. I'm like, what do you want? Like they lost their entire business and regained it in the past. We're like, well, your team was spot on. I didn't feel anything. And I don't know. I think Pluto transits are an onset for mundane astrologers, particularly with Pluto in Aquarius, which is sign of astrology. So it's really lovely to see the uptick of mundane astrologers. It's frightening as well because sometimes I fear, it's different times to do mundane astrology, at times of peace and a time of war, and sometimes I fear that that my Spirit of Matter channel was given an impression that it's easier than it is, I guess, and I don't want to mislead people. That is, I really love to watch people content, like the good astrologers out there. So it's kind of like April. A little bit of the omens that came about. First of all, as I was separating my toes with rose quartz crystals, because I'm fancy. I mean, there was a big sale of rose quartz crystals, and it was a dream come true, I have to say. But it was a Saturn hour, and I was thinking about how we really should train AI agents to do secure attachment patterns. And I'm very optimistic about the AI revolution because they'll probably make a more effective labor revolution than we could even envision. Okay, and it prompts the understanding that we cannot create things with the mindset of those things being enslaved, namely those things doing the mundane tasks for us without them becoming agents. And I think it's a good thing to remember. AI agents, I'm watching an episode about AI agents, and the title of the episode was Toddlers with a Bazooka. So I love how channels that don't seem to get the views get to the SEO of Google. I don't know how that happens, but that's kind of interesting. And also business-wise, when we think about business models, and we are broadcasting at the aftermath. I'm broadcasting at the aftermath of the drop of the petering. Okay, of the 30 million files. I know that they've been trying to cover them up, and already pump pedophilia content or normalization of pedophilia with fertility, and I'm like, it's so obvious, but to people that went through significant trauma, it's not obvious. And the onset is, let's just say it, I'm half Israeli, half Dutch. When people talk about the Dutch travelers, the Italians had a certain word for it. They say, no money comes from these people. Yes, I'm not saying that's a good thing, um, but why did they say that? Because we'd pack our tea, we'd pack our sandwich, we'd pack our food, we'd go travel. Okay, we basically would have a picnic mindset wherever we go. And the bad side, the downside is that unless we intentionally want to contribute to a certain local economy, which means we've understood the economy, okay, think about Volk as looting the Spanish banks for silver so that the people can buy food. And then bring it out, they took gold from the Amsterdam bank, it was supposed to be zero usury, and brought silver. But also nutmeg. The nutmeg story was a bit different, unfortunately, and we are apologizing for that until the end yesterday. So, but they were running from the Inquisition that was running from Islam, and we have to remember that even the Pope ran away from Islam. So, uh, now, the upside of traveling like that is that the how should I say that? Having a picnic in the mountains, because Dutch families crave the mountains, is unless you're into sailing the north. Not we're not doing that unless we're running from the Inquisition, I guess. Um, so it keeps us at a certain level where whatever is made or money that is made or the wealth that is made is to sustain. Because every half a century or so, we have a flooding of the North Sea. It's a different thinking up in the north. I loved traveling. We had, even when I was in a shelter, we had to leave in the morning and come back in the evening. Everybody traveled black. So I took the tram and the train to North Holland, North Amsterdam. The villages, the small villages up there, they have a modest yacht. It's not a Bezos yacht, but just something you could sail the sea with. And the cars are just BMW. The houses can't be more than 3 stories up, and that's it. That's about as I mean. Maybe there are some more fancy things, but that's about as north as north as somebody can get in terms of wealth display. What's the money for? Being able to sustain a flood. Now, I saw, I think it was a Finn joking about what if a Finn won the lottery versus American, and he was erasing the coffee brand and writing Presidente, which was the slightly more expensive coffee. So, other than the great advertisement for Presidente, um, it's a mentality. Now, when we thinking about building wealth or the wealth boom, I made a video about the wealth boom. I titled it, I really want you to make money in 2027. I also want you to remain willing to live. So this concept of, and how can people behave like that? Only with secure attachment. And this is where, even in Netherlands, we have some issues Um, and when that's the upbringing of the toddlers with bazooka, whether it's children or AI agents, then we understand that the economic decisions, an economic bubble. In the last century, we've been running on an economic bubble. Wealth meant addiction. It meant that people have to reach certain, they have to be in certain social groups, and in those social groups, they have to be in certain parties, and in those parties, even up in university, I was in university. I was at a certain part of the evening. I was no longer. I went to bed early, so then I hear some guy was eating a cookie. They thought it was a natural cookie, just a cookie. It wasn't. Nobody bothered to tell him. And those things happen all the time now. When it's, let's say you conjure. Now, here is another thing. In Israel, 99% of people have PTSD. Wrong type of thing in the cookie can clash with their PTSD. In fact, that's what happened in the Nova. The clash was not with weed, but with psychiatric pills. People were taking psychedelics to alleviate post-traumatic symptoms that they have, and then they wrote some stuff that clashed with those things and hospitalized the people. It was a tickling A bomb. Now, all of these things come up before April, and they remind us that even when we talk about business opportunities, fear tactics, lack mindset, they don't generate. When I used to work at sales, I was a very frustrating person to work with because I adopted hardly anything, maybe a speck, not even a frequency of everything that they told us. Because I had the sensitivity to to bubbles. You say, why did they keep me at a job? Because I knew how to identify the opportunities that nobody, in a way that nobody, I would sell to the clients that were considered impossible to sell because I identified where where does my product meet their need authentically. And then I didn't care about the crescendo. My mom would always also give me that crescendo when I did editing for her book. She'd say blah 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 blah. Then I drink a coffee, she drinks a coffee. I was like, yeah, you know what? I thought about this. You are right. And the more she'd give me that, the more I understood I'm up on something. By the way, somebody once did that to me with nutrition. I told them, don't take the colors of my palate, which is, I meant the fruits and the vegetables. And they were like, you should eat nuts and seeds, not more than one fresh fruit a day. And I was like, ah, but they were right for the nervous system. And this was when I was going like my mom. uh, you wanna unnerve a Taurus? Talk about their diet. But that one was actually useful. Um, so that concept also directs me when I think about AI. AI 1111. This is for Caitlin. AI equation of creation. Creation can only be as emergence of embodiment and willing consent. Otherwise, we have inflammation and degeneration. So, um, yeah, now that this thing come up, so more things that I can think about before we begin to actually read the chart for April. It has the Jupiter direct in it, Mars direct in it, Mercury, Saturn. And this is that when we talk business, we don't want a business bubble based on inflammation. Right now, they're finding out the connection between fibro, ADHD, I think trauma. Okay, it's all inflammation. And they say, oh, and genetics. Again, traditional Chinese medicine. I think it's the pancreas issues. What are the pancreas issues? Oh, this hereditary. What's hereditary? The father was drinking alcohol. The grandfather was drinking alcohol. The grandfather was drinking alcohol. All of them married girls at puberty. It's nothing hereditary. It's like let the teeth of the children not rot if the parents just don't eat unripe fruit. Now the healing models they exist. They should not be gatekept. That's because when we think about why does Swiss bank allow itself to expose the lists of people that have account in Swiss bank every once in a while for the people that think that Switzerland is a tax haven. Never was, never will be. Never. It never was as well. It was always a bubble that pops. It's like if you use Switzerland for tax haven, you'd get taxed for it. Second World War, both the Jews that had the money in Swiss bank, namely those that managed to escape, and the Nazis, when they came to Swiss bank, they said, what money? Because what was this money supposed to have been doing? It was supposed to have been the right to exit violence. How was this money made? You'll say, oh, protection it's not just protection. The Jews say that they worked in protection because they couldn't open other types of businesses. If this is true, we have the same problem with Arabic in Israel. Whether it's amongst themselves or not amongst themselves, it's what Prophet Amos was talking about. Now, April is always a sovereignty month. It's a Sun in Aries month. It's a freedom month. Now, what is freedom? In China, freedom is doing with what one has. The good thing, it might be that it's taking the tea that we have and having a picnic mindset when we go to travel. It's becoming gaslighting where we don't even have that cup of tea, or when we in United States, it's whatever people mean when they say free country. Um, In other countries, it might be for Masons. Freedom is what Masons call freedom. People would call excruciating horror. They're basically facing every single one of their terrors, but while developing terrors to supposedly master themselves and become free. Now it sounds like a training of fear setting until you understand that they were targeted as infants. And it is no longer fear setting but fear prompting. So every definition can have the place where that definition collapses. This is what the Mongol Empire did. It took over land by collapsing the beliefs of people. Um, and a lot of the spiritual warfare was around that. Whenever that kind of reignites, more omens I can think about for April. Mainly that acute awareness that a business savvy is secure attachment, relaxed arousal, honoring child self, and all the things that we are sold that it isn't. Everything else is a bubble that pops. How to navigate as a sober person when in a sea of in a sea of drunkards? I don't know. I think all of us are having those challenges to face. Some people might talk about building community of sobers. um, Definitely the awareness that, let's say, I don't know, not everybody can save money. They need to be not attacked, not harassed, and so on. Um, so definitely that awareness is important, but the sobriety is also important, if that makes sense. So April, Mars goes direct on April 1 at 20 degrees Leo. New moon in Aries in 16 degrees Aries. Sun conjoins Saturn 17 degrees Aries. Mercury ingresses to Aries April 9. Mercury conjoins Neptune April 11. Jupiter goes direct 16 degrees Leo at April 13. So we have two planets going direct, co-present in the same sign, almost conjoining. Mars and Jupiter spend a significant time because of the retrograde being co-present in a sign, conjoining out of sign, conjoining within the sign, conjoining with Ketu. There's a lot of beliefs, and I think that that's the bubble pop. We are going to be like that Finn that erased the Kafe brand and wrote Presidente if they won the lottery. And I think even the fact that I brought today, I got my chai masala. And I was packing it from home, and I remembered to take some seeds and some dry fruits with me. So I drank my tea. By the time I reached to the restaurant, I bought 2 cups of hot water. And the guy was looking at me strange, and I showed him, said, I just need to feel it. And he said, oh, you want me to feel that? And I was like, yeah, why not? And I paid the 2 shekels for the 2 cups of hot water. Kind of like not to be a nuance. But they had this option that one could buy. And it felt like that Finn that that is drinking the Presidente, because it's chai masala. It's a very it's a very fancy tea. And even the next two cups, I'm drinking one, the third one now. We're still good with the morning, and that gives me that. It gives me the Presidente vibes, and it tells me that those of us that even aimed for secure attachment, relaxed arousal, say no to the bubbles. AI is not good or bad. It's about, do we use it to abolish human trafficking and create secure attachment, relaxed arousal, and so on? Or do we use it um, as the PDF files did? And the fact that the PDF files are hidden and they're generating another bubble, again, um, I was asked when I went to therapy, there was a friction where I said, oh, the children that are, that are safe and loved and so on and so forth, they're safe to say the yes, no, and maybe. Okay, so when a person tests for their, that would be the most frictional child to get through to. And that created a mega friction because it exposed many things in the world that are not actually loving. Now, I'm not saying it's impossible to get the children that are, in secure attachment and so on, but it's definitely the more frictional children to work with. They have their yes, no, and maybe in place. Like people would really have to exert excruciating power to get them out of that. And then they would already be leaving traces in the ether and not only in the ether. It would already be a registered offense. Well, when the children go through severe traumas, and unfortunately this happens to the children of the elite as well, then they're more susceptible to these any tradition that to get to that secure attachment is the alignment of the yin and yang, and it's emotional intelligence, it's erotic intelligence, it's meeting our emotional and material needs in a way, it's even aiming for the well-being. Just the fact that people are marketed to not even aim for the well-being, to psychologically ban the well-being, to rationalize violation of children under the guise of fertility. Those bubbles are gonna get them to the place where they are addicted on, they're sold onto something quicker. Now here's the thing, is the difference if a person comes from a very stable position, loved, safe, not feeling sexual shame, but not sexually addicted either. And not having gone through trains of rites of passages that make them susceptible. Okay, if people want to reach the clairs, embodiment is suffice. And if that person, let's say, travels somewhere and tastes a little bit of this or tastes a little bit of that, they would feel like they need to cleanse. They would feel like they need to come back to their senses. It's like, oh, wait a second, when I'm eating that, and that, then I'm clear-minded. They have an onset that they can return to. People that didn't have that, they had to discover that. They had to build that up from zero. Now, that person would be able, upon the cutting of resources, to say, oh, I don't even have to cut that from the diet. It was cut alone from the diet. That's so great. I'm going back to my tea and seeds and dried fruits and sardines and so on. But a person that never even tasted those sardines, and it's not, and that tea would feel like particulars, like it's not sweetened, it's not, what's even in that? But try to take a bite on the cinnamon. You'd feel the spices. But they're not used, they have to acquire that. Now, as they do, they begin to, the memory, the cellular memory begins to, and they're like, oh my God, the awareness that in their life they've never had stability, that in their life they never had love that is actually loving, not because they weren't loved, but because there wasn't that particular intelligence, or things that were passing hereditarily. Now, this is going to matter a lot for April, and I think this Mars Jupiter Ketu doing the back and forth through significant amount of 2027, but Sun, back then it will already have been in Taurus. It will already be in Taurus. The elaborated grammar that is probably incorrect, or if that grammar is correct, is by chance. Even me as a student did not get to study that. Um, we're gonna have a stellium in Aries. By the time that Mars and Jupiter go direct, but all the build-up before that, we still have Sol in Aries ruling. We're letting go of the beliefs and the patterns of actions and beliefs that are not constructive to our heart health, to our soul alignment. And then we continue to Sun in Taurus, which is relational, it's Venusian, values, Venus with Neptune in Aries, 5-degree Aries. This one is going to strike the aristocracy, the monarchy, the Regulian, quite some. And again, those of them who are cool with those of them who are the fin that wrote Presidente after they won the lottery will have less of an issue than those of them that went astray from that. And Neptune emphasizes the erotic. So we think about, what do we see as pristine? What do we see of the erotization regarding corrupting the pristine? Those that are attached to it will have a more difficult time to transition through this transit. They will have a more difficult time through this transit, whereas those that are aligned with the sense of self will have the longevity of the erotic. Okay, the whole issue about the 6, 9, and the nectar of life is longevity, but it's just yin-yang aligned. It doesn't look like we think it looks. It doesn't look like an unripe fruit that is corrupted and then harms the teeth. And it's literally shifting the that which we didn't know, that we didn't know about our eroticism. Now those families that would make that shift will set themselves for a good, easier transit when in the 2060s, where we're going to have another Saturn Neptune conjunction, but this one will already have been squaring Pluto, no longer in the sextile. It may give chance to a lot of monarchies, a lot of aristocracies to enjoy that friction, meaning that they won't necessarily be in the hands of the bankers, the energy companies. You can't think about sovereign energy, but sovereign energy also means declassism. Basically, not only no slavery, but every single person is the I am. That's the gnosis of Sirius, the big sun, which doesn't show up so much here. But this is something that is a change of something that is so inherent, and that changes of the fundamental of the Aries, of the core of tradition. Very challenging in transit to go through, not impossible. And I think the already thinning of the veil between classes and regions in the world and cultures is a good opportunity. And I also think about, I'm sorry for the rude word, we bitch about the climate change economy, but when I was a young child, a millennial, there were Julia Roberts movies to try to prompt people to do climate activism, to try to get people to ruin our world a little less, and they tried to combine, it was within the sextile of the Pluto Neptune, they tried to combine with the material, and I'm saying materialistic, esoteric materialistic economy that was set on a prolonged bubble. Why am I saying materialistic and not capitalistic? Because communism was as materialistic as capitalism, both in the sense that we actually had communist oligarchs, and in the sense that it was a materialist dogma, and in the sense that both had an agrarian and an industrial phase. And both of them called for the people to own the means of productions, if that was the land or the machine. Think about agrotech, or the land and the machine. We see billionaires quenching for land, so and the more disregard there is for certain segments of society, certain people in society. Just think about the fact that we couldn't have had a lot of the industrial boom without the developing India and the engineering, the tier one engineering that we have in India. So if people would disregard the Indians, they would miss out on economy. Okay, even Rockefeller, he didn't miss out on women being able and competent to do productive labor. He saw what the men in the household didn't see. Like, hey, this woman can take care of the kids, she can take care of the laundry, she can take it. All of that could be paid work. She'd pay taxes, the employer pay taxes, she has independence. The husbands still have to work. People say, oh, the Nordic people say, how can we be a stay-at-home mom or stay-at-home dad? Because our economy is such that we need two salaries to sustain. On the other hand, the risk to the lineage being lost by domestic violence was by far exceeding the risk of economic crisis, particularly in countries that have a social safety net. And no, it's not just the miners in Sweden or the gas in Norwegian, it's also the culture and the mindset, whether it's done through welfare, whether it's done through community. It has to be so that people are not susceptible to invasion. More from April. Chiron re-enters Taurus April 14. Right now, Chiron is where it will re-enter in April 14, 0 degree Taurus. We're going to have Moon and Uranus sextiling, Moon opposing Pluto, and in the bisextile with Neptune. Mars, Jupiter still with Ketu, doing the back and forth in their direct motion. Saturn already 18 degrees Aries. Venus at the time of the ingress is 23 degrees Pisces, accentuating Jupiter with Ketu, which tells me that the for good, okay, the S.J. Anderson term for good, ingress of Chiron. S.J. Anderson is an astrologer that coined the term for good ingress, meaning that the most important stuff happen on the for good ingress of an outer planet or an intergenerational planet to a sign. If somebody did coin that before that, then now the for good ingress has Venus ruled by Jupiter that is conjoining Ketu, which means that the keynote of Chiron in Taurus is letting go of beliefs around relations and standards and values that no longer serve. In the middle decan of Leo, it's also about beliefs about how to heal relations, how to curate values, or how to curate the senses that no longer work. For example, people that believe that they can travel, take a vacay, and have somebody giving them, let's say, a massage and heal from big traumas. Basically, we saw the Epsteins taking over. There was an infiltration of the masseur profession by the Epstein ring, and it was generated to re-traumatize everyone. And that's just one example that pops and shows us how those ways to so-called curate the sensory will no longer apply. I think about the time where people started to understand that consuming corn is not the edible, is actually counterproductive to fertility. Even when they didn't know about the abuse in the industry. Okay, for example, a lot of us didn't know about the levels of abuse in the film industry, not the corn film industry. The normal film we take our children to. So Jupiter ruling over Venus with the ingress that's ruling over the ingress of Chiron, for good ingress. And that was also something that I was shown, because there are attempts to to make those movie settings, let's just say a part of the onset of social media was also the ether social media. And again, it invites us. It's kind of like the problem is getting big enough, so people begin to tend to it. And to, if I think about movie stars, they were very secluded and nobody knew what is actually happening, what is happening in society. It becomes something that people get the chance to say, hey, that's not something that's compatible. Or and with that, as usual with Neptune, we then go to the helpless situation, the times where what is needed is the safety of the helpless and the agency in writing our own movies. It's both of them. And I think esoteric that benefically tends to both has a strategic advantage over all others. Um, do I know how? No, I would develop something today if I knew, but that's kind of the trend that I can identify. What the heck is this thing? uh, Mercury conjoins Saturn April 19 in 19 degrees Aries. The almost annual reality check on our communication, our agency within our communication, our agency within technology. And with Saturn, we always ask, where do we want to put the boundaries so that something can grow? Or how do we set the cornerstone that stand the test of time? Saturn is in detriment in Aries because Aries is the new. Saturn builds up on past experience. Even with Aquarius, Aquarius is a tradition of rebellion. Okay, for example, what have we learned from the tradition of rebellion of the underground, the days of the underground juntas? Nothing that's funded by an oil or a gas company is actually an underground junta. Okay, I'm not saying it doesn't yield also good results. I'm just saying that and people get extremely emotive around something that is crucially horrific for them. Um, it's the truth. It's not okay. It's like, will the underground juntas get you to be the person that writes off the coffee and writes Presidente? I think not. And that's their whole point. It's to get a person to that addiction, and particularly when they target the erotic, it's something that builds on so many things. One of the best investments that a person can make for themselves is to curate their inner erotic. It's not about shame, but it's also about retrieval of not just agency and sovereignty, but the ability to let go of those being safe. You say, surely the world has to change. Say, good morning, what do you think I'm doing here? This lady said no to having a harem. It's decades of tending to these things. Um, Now, Sun conjoining Chiron, April 20th. Venus ingress to Aries, April 20th as well. Full moon in Scorpio at 0 degrees Scorpio. That's an interesting one. Venus conjoins Neptune, April 24. So we have the new moon in Aries, the full moon. Then we're going to have Mercury conjoining Chiron, April 25, and Sun conjoining Mercury. It's the Chiron month, and the Chiron is associated to the Mars and Jupiter going direct because of the ingress of Chiron to Taurus, where Venus is in Jupiter's sign. The new moon, the full moon in Scorpio, at 0 degrees Scorpio, would have a Sun Chiron with Venus on the world degree of Aries. So we can think about the Saturn-Neptune conjunction of 2456 at 0 degree Aries. We can think about the 30 million PDF file drop and the Sun Chiron in Taurus. Full moon, we're going to be exposed to the wound around the values regarding, it's exactly what I've been talking about the entire time. Okay, the onset of creation of the wound around the values of the people that were at the PDF file. Now, I hope by then we won't need to have another drop, because I can see the social media there, and I can see that the targeted audience for videos that normalize, that literally say, I don't know, the West ruined pedophilia, and I'm like, that's the easiest way to ruin the West. Enabling pedophilia erases any advantage the West had ever over anything. And I say, but surely it's not like the founders of the United States weren't also pedophiles and so on. I said, this is true. They also had slaves. But they tended to that. The fact that you could drop a pedo ring today and it's an actual, that somebody actually sees that as, oh my God, they did those controversial things. Oh my God, we weren't just imagining. That framework is something that was built in a century. Like it or not, in that Rockefellers and the Rothschilds were creating something unprecedented to the spirit of the times that was only there around the Templars, when they began to basically dethrone people by exposing the crimes against children in the churches. Okay, it was a fiscal matter. It was an extortion cult then, it's an extortion cult now. And people can get angry, but that they get angry doesn't change the truth. Okay, those that took it on the witches ended up on the guillotine at the best of cases. Okay, they were. And Aries is towards the 50s ingressing to Taurus, which means that we're going to deal with the frustration of a century of oppressed women. These women would be quite frustrated. Yeah, I know the 0 degree Aries is an ouchy point for people. They were born into it. The boys were raped. They tried to at least profit off of their own. And it is even way worse. And this is why, even before Pluto ingressed, I said those that can to get out of the lodges, those that can and have families in the lodges. And before the Saturn Neptune, I said, plan for sovereignty. Plan for sovereignty is going to be a drop the Peter ring. I am, and so it was. And I addressed the many things of alleviation of corruption. Okay, I addressed the fact that people were born into it and they needed the right to exit violence that is playing into the hands of a extortion cult to only pay attention to the names but not to the structure that created and so on. Okay, now I'm the one drinking Presidente. No, I'm the chai masala, but um, okay, it's not anything other than what it is. It's that simple, humble investment that stood the test of time. And I cried and raged and I said that the solutions are there, the curations for even pedophiles are there. And I don't mean drugs. I argue with survivors that talked about choice when I emphasized not only the access to choice but also the astrological components in supporting the exit from. Okay, if I otherwise I would be disiluding myself, and if I would be disiluding myself, that tea wouldn't taste the same. If I would be getting to drink it. Not easy to argue with people that went through horrors and holocausts, and that one thing that were keeping some sort of the veil between there and not there was like, oh, wait a second, that thing is only true when ta 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 ta. It's beyond frightening. But it also provides for centering that is beyond what we thought that we can have. Just like knowing that if I will go out there, it's going to be a hot day, and Mars is with Sedna, and everybody's going to feel like they want to kill everyone. Whereas if I'm in the air condition, then my nervous system is okay. It's kind of like, oh, but there is choice, there is agency. It's like everything is fine until your brain is melting. Knowing that is agency. Knowing that is taking advantage of the access to choice that I do have to build something that sustains with what I can. Ignoring that is believing I can just go out there in the beaming sun and be a great person and not. Now, if I wanted to reduce crime during the summer season, I'd need to have people have access to air-conditioned spaces. I could go about education, I could go about culture, but I would also need to facilitate the right choice. Another issue is, of course, drugs, and Neptune in Aries, which Venus will later conjunct, has to do with that. And I mentioned the story with the person and the cookie.